Our big story tonight is on those talks that took place between the IEBC and NASA and Jubilee separately. We've heard from NASA, and of course, we've also heard from the EU Election Observer Mission, who just today released a statement on the state of affairs in this country with respect to that stalemate that persists regarding this election. Nonetheless, the IEBC says they're continuing to make preparations. Let's now hear from the Jubilee side that was rather pleased with the events at that meeting that was held late this afternoon at the Bomas of Kenya. And for that, I'm joined by Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, who's also the majority leader in the Senate in this country. Senator, good evening and thank you. I'd just like to ask you, the Deputy President came out of that meeting quite pleased. He said he was happy, with the outcome of the talks and happy with the preparations. Could you describe to us the nature of the talks?
Well, I think what was important, as you may be aware, Yvonne, I was part of the team that went to the meeting with IEBC. We had a very good meeting. The invitation letter came from IEBC that they wanted to bring us up to speed, to appreciate how far they are in preparation for the elections. And we think that the IEBC is doing their best to ensure that they accommodate the concerns raised by the Supreme Court. And on our side, we went there with open arms, with a clear mind. We don't have a reducible minimum or increasable minimum or any minimum of any sort. So our confidence and the reality of the situation is that we appreciate in Jubilee that IEBC, the I in IEBC is independent. And we made it very clear, the Deputy President made it very clear to IEBC that we have no desire or we do not foresee a situation where we'll be involved in procurement processes within IEBC, we'll be involved in management of staff within IEBC. Ours is to prepare ourselves for the 26th elections. And on the IEBC side, they have a constitutional responsibility, not to Jubilee, but to the Republic of Kenya and to the common voter to ensure that the elections is free, fair, and credible, and that that responsibility, they must discharge it with utmost respect to the citizen of the Republic. That's why we didn't go with any expectations outside the Constitution, and therefore we were very happy with the update given by IEBC, and they assured us that they are ready to run the elections on 26th and that they have accommodated everything that the Supreme Court had called.
All right. Okay, thanks for that. Senator James Orengo, however, disagrees with you on this issue of that Jubilee has no demands. I'd like us to listen to this clip.
We still insist that our demands must be met for purposes of holding an election within 60 days, and also for purposes of ensuring that that repeat election or fresh election is going to be held in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, including the decision of the Supreme Court. So.
Right. He had earlier mentioned, it's perhaps not in that clip, that it is not true that you have no conditions and no irreducible minimums. He was citing the amendments that are currently under discussion. What's your response, Senator?
It is not our condition. As you know, the NASA's irreducible minimum, we have even lost count because initially there were 11. They added Safaricom. I don't know which other company now they have added, and they have added also these legislations that they must be withdrawn. For us, we have no conditions on the legislations that are being passed. In fact, those of us who are in Jubilee side believe that the legislation as it is does not affect the procedure of holding the elections. To the contrary, it clarifies certain legal interpretations that the Supreme Court was grappling with, and we think that it will not alter in any way the manner in which IEBC is preparing for elections, and that I can give the utmost assurance. Number two is that even the legislation that is in Parliament, we don't know if it will be passed by Parliament, we don't know if it will be changed, we don't know any other contribution that Kenya is going to give us. You have reported in your 7 o'clock news Kenyans are robustly making contributions to that bill, saying we change here, we add here. In fact, there's some of them who are making even additional contributions to the bill. So we have it's not a condition of any sort. It is very sad, Yvonne, I can tell you this as a leader in the Senate, that we feel extremely cheated, that we have colleagues who are supposed to contribute to that bill, even if it is about shelving the bill or postponing the bill or improving the bill or deleting certain sections in the bill, who come to the parliament, they lock in their cards in the Senate, get their sitting allowances, and they walk out. And they cheat the Republic, who elected them to go and represent them. Now we see them in press conferences when they should be serving in the committees of parliament and making their contributions. Be that as it may, we are a very reasonable team working in Parliament. We will look at all the issues. We have no guarantee that there is law that will be passed. We have no guarantee on what provisions are going to be passed and how it's going to be made, but I can make assurance that we are reasonable, we understand the political environment we're working in, and we will not put IEBC in more trouble as has been put by NASA with so many court cases and with the Supreme Court decision.
All right. I'd like your reaction to the statement today that was released by the EU Election Observation Mission. And we've just spoken to the head of that, Honorable Mariacha Shahe. And she mentions in the statement today, and I quote, "None of the proposed changes are critical for Kenya to comply with international commitments or appear to be prerequisites for improvements to the fresh election." And she says, for the sake of consistency, that perhaps the proposed legal reforms be tabled after the current election. What's your response to that, Senator?
Well, first of all, unlike our colleagues in NASA, I heard Senator Orengo, and unfortunately, dismiss the diplomatic corps, our developing partners and our friends. I would like to say that the comments by the EU Observer Mission are welcomed. They're very good comments. A little bit perhaps out of context. I heard you asking that question to Madam Shaka about whether really there is comparable international situation like ours, to the extent that you can say it's an established practice when the Supreme Court says that certain things must be put in place. I think she was contradicting herself, and I can understand because she doesn't understand the local situation. I would see on one side she's saying there must be minimum reforms to elections. On the other, she says that the legislation must not be put in place. My understanding of what reforms are is legislative, administrative, mechanism that will ensure that elections are better. So her comments are welcomed in the context in which they reviewed what's going on in the country. We welcome their comments, and we think that it should be considered by the Committee of Parliament as part and parcel of comments. And I would request to her or through the EU Observer Mission locally here to channel those comments to the committee by Thursday, and they will be considered along many other views that Kenyans are giving on the bill. And I'd be even more happy if she can cite a few of international practices she's referring to, what happened in which country, as very good precedent for us to apply in the working on this bill. We welcome those views, and I think she should even put it in a form of memoranda so that we can consider by Thursday this week.
All right. To the extent to which, I mean, we have got, what, 2 days to the closing of getting public views and public participation of these amendments. But getting the public view is fine, but some perhaps see it as a way of you're gang-ho, you're going on with it, whether or not NASA wants to or not. My question is there room for compromise? Is there room for discussion on these issues? Or do you think NASA is abdicating its responsibility by not participating? They would see it differently, that you are bullying your way with these amendments and that it just continues to create tension when we've got just 22 days to go to the poll.
You see, you saw, if you saw in the committee, first of all, you need to appreciate that Article 1 of the Constitution says that as citizens of this republic can exercise their sovereign right directly or through their democratically elected representatives. One of the direct ways of exercising sovereignty is Article 118 of the Constitution, where Kenyans directly appear before Parliament and make certain recommendations. And you can see that there are many recommendations that came before the committee today that are in consonance with what NASA is talking about, meaning that when the NASA supporters have realized that their representatives have abdicated their duty, they have not slept on the job. They brought their views to Parliament, and we have accommodated those views in terms of the public views that have been done today. Number two is to say that even for, first of all, the standing orders provide for 7 days for public participation. We have provided more than 70 days because it's still available for any Kenyan to send memoranda up to Monday next week. And we want to listen to as many Kenyans as possible making their comments. We want to be as sober as possible. We want by Tuesday next week, when the bill is going to be tabled in Parliament, we will have made a decision whether to proceed with the bill or not, or to proceed with the bill in the manner in which it is, or we amend. And most of the recommendations there, Yvonne, are not going to be applied by IEBC. Some of the recommendations, for example, about succession planning within IEBC management, it's not going to be hopefully be a situation where Honorable or Chairman Chebukati will not be in office for us to worry so much about the chairman. So they will apply even thereafter after elections, or when we are looking at quantitative and qualitative analysis of how election has been done, it's not by IEBC, that will be applied by any Kenyan who's going to be analyzing how the results have been done. So some of the provisions that have been, or the punishment that is going to be meted on any person who is going to falsify documents, that will be applied after the elections, which means that when you look back and see that there is any Kenyan who falsified documents or try to subvert the process of elections, can be punished using that law. So, as I have said, we are willing to listen to all views. Nothing is cast in stone. We are an open and democratic political outfit, and we will listen to all views. I cannot tell you, Yvonne, for sure how the law will look like by the end of next week when it will be in Parliament.
All right. The EU Observer Mission says the phrase, quote, absence of the chairperson for any reason is insufficiently defined and is therefore open to arbitrary interpretation. Also, others have raised the issue that you are proposing with respect to presiding officers that don't perform their role as is required, that already exists in the Election Offences Act. In fact, we've seen certain election officials being taken to court for similar malpractices. So some would say you're already trying to make amendments to a law, and yet that law already exists.
Fantastic. And that's why I'm saying all views are welcomed. Those who are saying that about the definition of the chairman is insufficient, they can give us a sufficient definition. We will include it in the views. Those who think that the punishment that was in place, what we are doing is to make the punishment to up to 5 years in jail. We are making it extremely punitive for any person to benefit from a process that subverts the constitutional right of the people of Kenya. And those who think that the punishment should remain the 1 year that is provided for by the Act, we will welcome it. Those who think that our expanded definition of those offenses is too much, they can bring their views. As I told you, nothing is cast in stone. The idea, and I'm very happy that now we are discussing issues because we have provided the forum and we're providing the opportunity for us to engage on issues, unlike a situation where, you know, our friends are saying that before we go to the next game, we must change the ball, we must change the color of the shirt of the referee, we must change the firimbi the referee is using. I think all those things are also part and parcel of things that are being canvassed by our colleagues. But for us, at least we don't call them irreducible minimum. We don't call them conditions. We have not given IBC a condition that they should not prepare for elections. They should wait for this law because we don't know when this even will become an act of parliament. We don't even know whether, you know,
yes, but Senator, there have been efforts but there have been efforts to expedite that, even reducing the amount of time of publication of the bill from 14 days to 1. So there's obviously a sense of urgency that we see from the National Assembly to ensure that this goes through very fast, hopefully to before the 22nd. Is there a difference now? Have you slowed down the pace?
No, if it can become law as soon as possible, it will be fantastic, because then it will fill the lacuna, the gap that is in the law at the moment. But if it is in the interest of Kenyans that law delays, then definitely Parliament will make that decision. As I told you, I wish as many people as possible. I see so many of my colleagues who are so privileged to be members of Parliament, a position being sought by so many Kenyans who never got that chance. They are now making noise outside Parliament when they have a great opportunity to convince us on the floor of the House to make, even for the sake of putting it on record, on official record, their comments about what or how the law should be or what not should be done, what should be suspended, when that law, even if we pass it, when that law should come into effect. That should be, those issues must be canvassed and for the record within Parliament. And I must commend, of course, a few of the members of Senate, like my colleague Mutula Kilonzo Jr., the Senator of Kisumu, Fred Outa, among others, who recently, when we were passing the committee, they came to Parliament to try to make their views known. But unfortunately, they have refused now to participate when it's more critical. Yeah. And I'm waiting to see next week how it will look like. Right. If they are not going to participate, then unfortunately, they will have let down a constituency they represent.
But Senator, some would take issue with the approach and the manner. Because you're saying now that you're taking all views, the amendments are not, the proposed amendments are not cast in stone, and we will see what happens by the end of this week and going into next week. But the other side takes issue with the approach that it wasn't bipartisan, as happened last year with a joint parliamentary select committee, and also citing it as a stumbling block in the talks between IEBC, NASA, and the Jubilee Party. So what's your take on that? If this appears to be the big stumbling block right now, is there any room for compromise?
Maybe this is not known to you, Yvonne. NASA wrote officially that they are not participating in Parliament, in writing. And to the Speaker of the Senate, he has a letter from Honorable Wetangula that says that NASA are not going to participate in any committees of Parliament or any debates in Parliament until the repeat elections is done. How are we supposed to treat a situation like that? NASA is fighting, they have an infighting over leadership of NASA. They don't have a majority leader formally in the House. They don't have a deputy majority leader. They don't have a whip. They are not participating in House Business Committee. You know, really, so who has run away from that responsibility? Whom are we supposed to have bipartisan engagement with if the persons who have been given that responsibility are not available? Tell NASA today, tell Honorable Wetangula to give me to place a call or call me tomorrow. I'm the leader of Senate business, business on behalf of the Senate, but also on behalf of the majority. If they can call me tomorrow morning and they say we must participate tomorrow afternoon, we will include them in the committee.
Let me get your reaction to the news that's coming in tonight, and this is from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I wonder if you've had a chance to see this, but they're now saying that they're going to be opening a thorough, comprehensive and expeditious investigation into allegations that have been raised by NASA among a number of individuals, including Davis Churchill, who was a chief election agent for your party, for electoral offences allegedly committed and for allegedly aiding and abetting commission of offences under the Election Offences Act, excuse me. So that today the DPP is now saying they're looking into the allegations against Davis Churchill, whom I believe was at the meeting today. What is your reaction to this process?
Well, we are law-abiding coalition. NASA has made allegations about Davis Churchill, Safaricom. I've seen, some letter that has been written by the DPP that is saying that investigations are going to take place and must be accomplished within 21 days. And I don't think, as I've said before, the same has been said about IBC. The same is being done for Senator Orengo, and there was another one person in NASA. And for our law-abiding citizens, there must be no problem. When DPP said we are doing investigation, it must be respected. And I believe that Honorable Davis Chirchir and all those who have been mentioned should be able to assist the DPP or the Director of Criminal Investigations to ensure that we get into the bottom of these allegations from NASA. And if NASA filed false accusations, they must also be held accountable at the very end. So we welcome forward to the results of that investigation. We believe in the Jubilee that there's nothing we did. I believe Senator Orengo is also going to record his statement, and the truth will be known in the fullness of time.
All right, thank you very much. That's Majority Leader in the Senate, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen. We thank you for your time on the big story today. His perspectives on that meeting that was held with the IEBC. IEBC also had a separate meeting with NASA. That is a big story today. Still no consensus and still not a tripartite meeting. NASA saying they will sit down with President Uhuru Kenyatta and his camp only once they drop those now controversial amendments. Jubilee, on the other hand, saying we've invited them. They will not be part of the process, and therefore they're going on with gathering public views, which end this week on Thursday. That's our big story tonight. We thank you for watching. The hashtag online is The Big Story. We'll see you again tomorrow when we'll be tracking the big story of the day. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good night.